The chatty one ready? All right. Good morning, everybody. It is April 1st at 11 o'clock a.m. We're here in council chambers for our second negotiation session with the police union. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
You have a handout in front of you and it's projected on the screen. These are all of the proposals traded last time. The ones on the screen are in gray because it was easier to read than the yellow in front of you. These are the items that we TA'd, and everything in white we have remaining open. Did we need to revisit any of the items in white before we get rolling?
We have a couple that we're willing to TA at this point, but I don't know if, we don't have any questions about them, if that's what you're saying.
Well, let's knock them out if we can.
Number 7.
Yeah.
Kind of out of order.
The enhanced DAP.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll TA that one.
Yeah, we're good. So it's gonna be just to confirm, 10 visits. Is that what we confirmed?
Six.
Oh, it's 6.
But with wiggle room.
With wiggle.
Wiggle.
That's right.
Wiggle, unofficial wiggle. This will be TA 9, right?
Per incident, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And no more mandatory.
Because there's 4 of you, I'm gonna let you walk it back.
Sounds good. And then proposal number 8, the Percy match.
Okay.
I think that is it for now.
All right, so I have some individuals that I'm gonna go through, and then my kind of packaged one is gonna address your 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, and 2.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, first up, we have city proposal, and this will be our number 10. This is an adjustment in how we look at your holiday and vacation time. Sick leave is listed here just so all of the leave is listed together in the contract rather than kind of in 2 spaces. So to start, what I did was built in the holidays we TA'd on, and then I took your holiday hours. So I defined it 8 hours for a 40-hour employee, 6 for a 30, 4 for a 20. I then took the 12 holidays, that includes the floating that we have, and I took that times 8 to get 96 hours divided by pay periods is 3.70 hours per pay period. That would be what your accrual looks like for holiday. Right now, holiday is very odd in the police department. The 1st of January, you get a bucket, and you then use that bucket throughout the year. The problem that we run into is when people leave. I don't know how many times, I don't know how many of you have been yelled at. We get yelled at because they owe hours back. So we are proposing to take holiday and vacation as separate accruals, and in table 3, it shows you we would add those 2 numbers together, and that is what would go into your accrual bank. So I'll show you that real quick. So your holiday time plus your vacation time is what you would log into the system and see. So the number's pretty nice. So this is for the current chart, not the historical one. You would get 4 vacation as a new hire plus 3.7 holiday. So per pay period, you would accrue 7.7 hours. And then you would use that because you don't have designated holidays throughout the year. Now, the good side about that is if you were to leave, we still pay out the 400 hours and the holiday time would then go into that bank. So we don't pay it out upon separation of employment and we don't roll it over, but it does add some value there. The other thing I had heard from members from your members that I wanted to try to address is how the city pays worked holidays is different than worked holidays in the police department. And that's because we have actual holidays and you have holiday time. So I cannot process those the same. There's just no way for me to do that. So in the contract, I have built in the proposal, actual versus observed holiday. And I kind of defined both of those on lines 26 and 27. I then wrote in how it is applicable to your members based on their shift type, because you have 4 different groups of shift types based on sworn work 24/7, 365, same as ECOs. Ordinance works 7 days a week, but not 365 days. They don't work Christmas and Thanksgiving. And all other positions work hypothetically a 5-day week, and they're closed on observed holidays. So when you would get paid holiday time, that special time and a half pay would only be on what is defined for the working holiday pay application. It's very confusing to employees to understand why some members get it on certain days and other members don't. So this is an effort to clarify that. I also did add under the holiday call out that floating holiday is excluded and it is only applicable for emergency response situations. Same thing with vacation accrual. So if you leave and you're rehired, because this is now a thing we do, we have more members come back to your department than we do any other. So we wanted to address the current practice and is we do not bridge time. So when you leave, when you come back, that is your new date. I added 30-hour employees in here as we tend to keep moving people around on 20, 30, or 40 hours. It's just easier to have all 3 categories in the contract, so it's addressed regardless of employee status. It seems awkward and it's an adjustment for your employees. The biggest thing to understand is they're not losing any time. That 400-hour bank will stand, but if you're less than 400 and you have holiday time in there, which you won't be able to see separately, you will be paid out for it, which is a benefit you don't have on holiday time now. And then I put the 30-hour sick leave in there. I can't grant you more vacation time from your proposal. There's just no way we can staff the leave. The amount of time people would be off versus our staffing levels when we take into comp, especially light duty or workers' comp situations, it would be very difficult for us to staff the department at safe levels. This is kind of, I know, out of the blue for you. I'm just trying to take care of that headache of holiday time. So I know you're gonna need time to process and read on this one.
Okay.
When you log into the system, you would no longer see your police holiday. You would only see your accrual bank for holiday/vacation. Your sick leave bank would remain separate. It doesn't increase your leave at all. It just looks different. That's the most complicated one of the singles, if that makes you feel better. Number 11, nope, I missed one. Sorry, gotta go back to your vacation. I missed a whole section. Which I kind of forgot about. sick leave payout, underneath it, line 86, you'll see something called trauma recovery / mental health time. So this is a whole new concept. And as you'll see, this was contingent on us signing the elimination of enhanced EAP. What this is a bucket of hours that's for sworn officers that it's kind of like bereavement leave. It's granted as a request and approved. You would be granted 40 hours for a situation listed, for example, 92 through 102. It is time you could take away for a trauma recovery or mental health situation that is not your sick leave, that is not a workers' comp claim, that is not ADA. It's basically time away from work to recover from whatever horrific situation you guys just handled. We found the concept online. I did a bunch of research from the few cities I could find that were doing it. I worked with the chief and the major, and we're pretty comfortable with what we're bringing forward. There's a very easy approval process. It does not affect your leave balances. It is confidential as possible. You talk to your supervisor or whoever we wrote in here. It gets approved. That comes directly to HR that you've been granted the time. We load that into your bank so you can use it on time clock. Once the time period has expired, we'll remove that time so it doesn't linger out there. We cannot grant an extension on this, so if you needed beyond the 40 hours, you would need to move to sick leave, FMLA, or the ADA process. But that's kind of a new concept we're kicking around to try to make sure we're giving you recovery time from traumatic incidents. Unfortunately, you see a lot of those in your line of work, so we'd like to build a buffer where we can. I missed a whole section.
So on the back page, it says, in addition, the employee may be required to submit to a fitness for duty examination before being allowed to return from work.
So we currently do that with ADA and FMLA as well. The chief has the right to ask
Okay,
for
that's
it.
what I was going to
Yep.
ask, is who decides that?
The
It's
chief.
Okay.
We don't want to put people in the field who need more time.
Sure.
So city proposal number 11 is much easier. This is the ad pay we used to have when we eliminated longevity. We have not needed it in several years. It's simply striking this section from the handbook, from the CBA, so we no longer have dead language in there.
Okay.
Oops, sorry. As you are aware, we are undergoing a new system upgrade in finance. And I need the CBA to reflect that you might not get a pay stub emailed to you anymore, and I can't guarantee exactly what that is going to look like because I haven't seen it. This basically says we'll continue to do direct deposit. It does not delay your pay. However, pay stubs will they'll be based on the new city standard. I don't know if that'll be through a portal or an email, and I don't know exactly what that pay stub will look like. So I took out any language that referenced exactly what would be on the pay stub and made it a little more general. City 13 is addressing step movements, as we talked about. Anything in green, we have in a previous proposal, that's probationary periods, and we were going to talk about that today. And then I removed all the language about step increases and broke it down to 5 lines. With fiscal year 26, any sworn officer in an introductory period would be eligible for a step movement. Civilians will be eligible as long as steps are granted by council, as long as neither group is at max. And then line 22, there are no mid-year steps granted, and there is no retro strip given per previous fiscal years. Can you tell which two questions I get the most about steps?
So this would be regardless of probation.
Yep, if you're in an introductory or probationary period, you would still be eligible for a step movement as both sworn and civilian.
And it says introductory, is that?
Same thing.
Brand new
Introductory,
officers and
yep.
promotions.
Which doesn't have that's from officers, not an introductory period. This says specifically sworn officers within an introductory period, so it doesn't refuse your steps. So it seems like it's really.
It's in a different section. I'll double check. I'm pretty sure it's in another section. Right above it.
It's just what you need.
This is just the probation.
Right, that's what
in the
it means.
current
This
contract.
addresses probationary period.
Yeah.
So you can make sure that it's like those two.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think that's a different section. We'll double check.
$14 is cleaning up again language that is no longer necessary in the contract. Specifically, I considered removing the whole section, but I know change doesn't always go over well, so I just took out everything that was completely unnecessary. This is no longer applicable. We don't have any SROs who were an SRO before that we needed that weird ad pay. So I struck all of that language. And then I took out line 21. That language is already existing elsewhere in the contract. I didn't see a reason to have it duplicate. So I marked it that it's not struck, it's just in another section. I don't think we actually need this section at all because they're just paid as their rank, but I know sometimes it makes people feel better to still see that clearly articulated.
We had looked at that, so we didn't think we had anybody that applied. So.
Yeah, I checked. I think it's been 2 years since we've had anyone that hit either of these.
Okay.
All right, city proposal 15. I split education incentives and the recruiting education incentive into separate categories. But I'm addressing education incentives in my packet, so it shows as struck. The other big change I made was the post officer certificate currently is worth the same as an associate's degree. If we have someone post-certified, we can get them into FTO faster, which means we get them out onto the streets faster. So we moved that to $2,000 for 2 years, not $3,000 for one.
So it's 4,000 rather than
Yep.
3,000, just split over 2 years.
We also will require a copy of it as a new hire. The other kind of big change is on 6 and 7 on the bottom of the page. So on 6, a member who elects this hiring one isn't eligible for the educational ad pay. That's your current yearly one for the lump sums. Now 7, this is new for us. You are not eligible for the tuition reimbursement program if we are paying you an incentive for your degree at higher until you are done with that incentive payment. I got to
So if they-
balance that spending
So
somewhere.
if they're getting the bachelor's degree, the 3,000 a year for
Yeah.
4 years, then they can't go back to school until after that 4 years.
We
is
won't do tuition reimbursement until year
Until-
5, and we don't do it retro.
that. Okay.
So if they decide after their,
Then they're eligible.
say, year,
6,
whatever,
5.
6, they decide to go get their master's or
Then they're
whatever.
eligible for the
Okay.
program. Is that wrong? All right, does anyone need to stretch before I launch into this?
No.
Okay, I am not going to hand you out anything because you're going to look ahead and you're not going to listen to me. I've done this a few times. So we are bringing you a bundled offer that addresses compensation and many of your ad pays. It also addresses some of your benefits. And I'm sorry, this is really long. So currently, this is our structure for sworn officers. We have patrol officers with 3 classes, we have corporals/detectives, and we have sergeants. We agree wholeheartedly the 3rd and 2nd class is an unnecessary, so we agree that that should be rolled up. The difficult part of talking about police compensation is this is all the ways you were compensated. You have more than fire did. I had to add things. So base wage, clothing allowance is a lump sum, field training is a per day, shift is per hours worked, but no carryover or overtime. Step up is on day 3, which we also agree is dumb. Yearly education is paid as a lump sum, boot is a lump sum, physical fitness is paid twice a year, and then K-9 is set hours that don't show differently, it's just defined in contract, so that's why it's listed. Currently, we're in the bottom chart, we have 10 steps. We've added to that every year to get us to 10, and we agree we're gonna bump those number of steps up. Now, I'm not remodeling our kitchen, I'm building a new one. So everything that we kind of used to do, I'm not gonna talk about except for how I'm changing it. You're gonna be frustrated by some of the things I talk about, and I'm sorry about that in advance. You're gonna have preconceived notions based on just a tiny bit of information. If you let me get through the whole presentation, I think it will help. If you have questions, please ask. If I think I can address them more clearly later on, I will let you know and I will address the question there. The important thing to understand is under the new pay plan, every sworn officer has the chance to earn more money, and not just because there's more steps. So the proposed changes, again, these are grouped, they can't be taken individually. So here is a summary of changes that affect sworn officers only. Eliminating the 3rd and 2nd class patrol officers, that's Article 7, Section 9. The classification definitions are gonna need a lot of work. I haven't even begun to tackle those because I don't know quite how to write them right now. Create the non-competitive corporal structure. Because this would be threshold based, this is no longer a competitive promotion. So that's important to understand. It also changes the fact that there is not defined FTE, so that's a full-time employee allocated between patrol and corporal. That number is fluid. We did add a detective and detective sergeant as a pay grade. Compensation, so this is the hardest part of rebuilding the kitchen. Placement on the new table is not a step. So if you're at step 3, you're not going to be on step 4 on the new table necessarily, and that's hard for employees to understand. I built the table, which is called the base table, which is no raise. That is me taking this year's table, eliminating 3rd and 2nd class, and that 28 became our new rate of pay to start. Once I got all the placement based on earnings, I added a degree. So if you have a bachelor's degree or above, there's a separate pay grade for you with a different rate of pay. Special assignment pay, that's your detective and detective sergeant. That is also a higher rate of pay that is percentage based. Step up for sergeant, corporal to sergeant, and sergeant to lieutenant will be paid at day 1 and not day 3. Now, these are changes that affect all of your members. So we agree that your shift differential needs to change. However, we've found that the best practice is a percentage of pay rather than a flat amount. So we are presenting a percentage. Training built in is an hourly amount of $4 an hour, not a weird per day amount. And we're limiting that to sworn officers, emergency communication officers, and ordinance enforcement officers. All lump sum benefits and ad pays will be paid as a per pay period contribution, with the exception of boot allowance and the education recruiting incentive, which we talked about just a minute ago. Number 10, medical, dental, VEBA, EAP is now no longer an issue, and bilingual will revert to the city's standard benefit and be removed as language in the CBA. That's Article 7, Section 13, Article 14, Sections 1 and 2, and Article 15. And then 11, talking about redefining several benefits. The details are in the upcoming slides. No one's thrown anything yet, so that's good. So our proposed structure looks not much different, except for corporal is the threshold based. This is what it does to your compensation. So anything with the red line through it, we have built into the base wage. Anything with the purple line through it will be paid per pay period. So instead of once a year or twice a year, you'll get it with every check, which means we adjusted the amounts somewhat. So I'm going to use patrol as an example because that is kind of where everyone starts. So if you are a patrol officer, when you will have 3 shifts, 1, 2, and 3. Days, swings, nights. Now, if you are a trainer, you will also see a trainer when you log in, and I'll show you an example for like a person. Now, on the flip side of that, if you are a patrol officer with a degree, you will only see the patrol officer with degree when you log into the system. You'll have shift 1, 2, or 3, and if you're a trainer. So you'll only see one of either A or B, with a degree or without a degree. So you won't log in and see like 12 things. But by separating this, it does make the pay scale slightly more complicated. But it's much more transparent, and it helps employees understand what their long-term earnings are.
The trainer language here is you're performing your job duties that day as like a field training officer.
Yes, so you would log in as a trainer that day and get the extra $4 an hour. Now, corporal, same structure, but now we have, it's the same rank, but it's a different pay grade. We have detective and detective with degree. Notice we have no trainers there because there are not trainers in the detective division. There's kind of a job shadow, but not the formalized FTO program. The same thing exists for sergeant. And this is kind of what the overall structure looks like. So as a patrol officer, you would either see with or without a degree. You would have shifts, yes, with a trainer, or that wouldn't exist for you at all. This is an example of what an employee would see. So if you were a patrol officer who is a trainer, you would have your 3 shifts, and then you would have trainer as 3 shifts. Now, corporal is the first one where we have the eligible step-up function. So as you log into the system, you would see your corporal shifts, and you would also see that you've qualified to be a step-up sergeant, and you would have those shifts listed. If you are not at a point where you're qualified to step up, you would not see those. That help?
Trying to follow.
I know, trust me. My office is so sick of hearing this presentation. Okay. So now I'm going to start going into the individual pays and how we're looking to affect those. So it gets messier and then clear at the end. K-9 is listed in the contract. We're not looking at any changes in compensation for them. So field training, we are looking to move to a per hour amount rather than a per day amount. And we would limit that to sworn, ECOs, and ordnance. Training members will log into the correct timekeeping, and it will then that position that says trainer will have $4 an hour higher than their regular pay. So a little more transparent, easier to understand what you're earning for that day, affects your blended overtime rate.
And just out of curiosity, so when they're clocking in, they would essentially select that. They wouldn't have to add any additional, because right now they have to add additional
So
time.
no, they won't have to do any of that.
Okay.
They'll have just, sorry, I want to call them dispatchers, ECO or ECO trainer with each shift. And they'll pick the shift they're on and whether or not they're training. And then there will be no back end on the payroll side adding the weirdness. Because I have that report and it's really weird.
Yeah, I think right now it's a little confusing on how to add it in.
And it's more, it affects you more as a lump sum. It doesn't go towards your overtime calculation. It's awkward.
And with regards to, we've had instances where detectives have been pulled back to patrol to perform as a field training officer. How would that be addressed with this type of pay?
We don't have that as an option right now. Because we're moving to the non-competitive corporal, we're hoping we'll have more people in that structure and they wouldn't be coming out of the detective division. Again, I can only write so far, and that's why we have the conversation before I redline the contract.
Right.
All right, so next up is shift diff. So you guys asked for 10 cents per hour. We're gonna raise. So we would like to go to a percentage of pay, nothing for day shift, 2.5% for swings, 5% for midnights, and 1.25 for the midday cover, which is only applicable to ECOs. So a couple other big differences here. Shift diff will apply to holdover. So if you cross over and you're in that shift, you will then get paid the shift diff. Same thing for overtime. You just have to log your time correctly, and your payroll clerks have to help with that. Number 2 is a big change. It will only be paid for actual hours worked, not vacation, not sick leave, not holiday, not comp time usage. It obviously workers' comp applies. Shift diff is not applied upon termination for retirement or any other reason, so you don't get to retire on midnights and get that much higher. Sorry, guys, no. It is considered compensation, so we do tax it, and it is applicable to K-9 officers' shifts. They'll log their hours just under whatever their shift they're working.
Just to make sure I understand that the holdover, so if you're working shift 3 and you're held over 2 hours in the morning,
Your
the 2
shift diff
hours
drops off,
drops off during those 2
so
hours.
it's for hours worked.
And that's a separate thing that they'll have to log, or is that in the hours computation?
Oh, no, it has to be separate.
Okay.
Our system's getting smarter, but still not that smart. I tried.
So essentially, you just basically clock out at 7 o'clock and then clock back in
Yeah.
at a different.
At 7 o'clock.
And it's something you can adjust after your shift. You can correct. Unfortunately, the system cannot automatically apply a percentage based to the hours you're working. That was my first hope. We've spent 9 months figuring out we can't do that. Next up is step up for rank. I had to reword this a little simply because I needed to address that once you achieve step up, you'll have that position added so you can work it at the 5% increase, because that isn't necessarily a step 1. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear. You're not going to step 1, you're getting 5% and the step closest to that.
And then how would that work in the event that, like, you're stepping up on a midnight shift? Are you essentially getting
You would see
10%?
like Lieutenant 1, 2, 3, and you would log into the correct shift.
Okay.
And it won't show step up lieutenant, it will just say lieutenant.
Okay. But it still would have that shift differential built into that.
Still has the shift diff.
Okay.
Yearly education bonus. So, because I have built a degree into sworn officers, I had to split the chart between sworn and civilian, which makes it look weird. 2-year and associate's degree is $5 per pay period, so that makes it worth $5 more annually. A bachelor's degree for sworn, you'll no longer see any sort of ad pay for that because it's into your base. For civilians, we move that to $10 per pay period, and that comes out to $260. The master's degree looks very, very weird because if you're a sworn officer with a master's degree, you'll get the bachelor's degree hourly rate plus $5 per pay period to get you $130, so a nice little tiny bump there. Master's degree for civilians would move to $14 per pay period, taking it to $364. So you don't get it. If you had an associate's, a bachelor's, and a master's, you only get the bachelor's and the master's. You don't get the associates too. Physical fitness, we moved to per pay period, and to make math easier for all of us, I moved it to $10, $20, and $30 per pay period rather than a random number that matched what we do closer. So big changes here. We will offer the test quarterly. The chief will designate those days. You can take the test each time, hoping to improve your score. If your score drops lower, you're not going to drop in your payment. Your highest score will stand for a year from the date of that score. Dispatch incentives, we also moved to per pay period. Instead of $300, it's $12. Instead of $450, it's $18. No changes to the language above it. Oh, other than the incentive we paid in the first pay period following the achievement of the certification change. So I really struggled with this one because we just TA'd it. But when we reviewed the language you guys brought forward and reviewed all your justifications, we felt it would be a mistake to not address the ACE reporting requirements. So if you guys are okay with it, this is, and I'm sorry, we're touching something that has been TA'd, but we did see it was a deficiency in our payment process. So we have added one person to be the ACE reporting person in dispatch. Anyone need a break? Because I'm gonna talk a lot more. Okay. Next up, we're gonna talk about clothing and boot allowances. And there's a section 3, and it's like 2 pages long of all the gear that is uniforms basically issued to sworn officers. I did not include that in here for space. 46 slides is enough. So that section, we're not making any changes to. We are making changes to the other sections. So we are renaming this from clothing allowance to uniform standards and attire expectations. Fancy. Sworn officers are issued in a uniform as followed, and then that big section out of the current CBA. I'm not aware of any changes there. Next up, we would have uniformed civilians. So these are employees who are required to wear a department-approved uniform, and they will be provided a uniform for each day they are scheduled to work during a 40-hour week. Uniform standards will be defined in the PAR by the position type. To throw all of that in the contract makes it very large, and I don't have time to build that this year. First up, you have field positions. We have 2 that are in the field full-time. That is ordinance enforcement and the ordinance enforcement supervisor. Limited field, you have evidence technicians and the licensing and enforcement officer. Professional external facing, victim witness coordinator, and the training and community services coordinator. ECOs, so they are non-uniformed under this proposal, except I know they sometimes go to court because they have to testify. Because of that interesting part of their job, they do have the option to elect at open enrollment to be issued a uniform once per fiscal year for court appearances. If they do not want a uniform, they can just wear their business clothes. Non-uniform civilian staff is all other civilians, and they would be expected to adhere to professional and business casual attire, depending on their role and what their function is. Because they're not wearing uniforms, we would ask for business professional during court appearances or testimony. I'm not aware of any situations, but never say never, so we put that language in. Annually, these employees would be allocated shirts, as explained, and then no less than 3 style options will be provided for the employee selection. Colors, emblems must be approved and fit within city's branding. Boots. No change to the people receiving that. Sworn evidence, ordinance, training, and licensing all have defined footwear standards. They all receive $200 annually. We have run into the oddity, which is bullet point 3 and its sub-bullet points. If someone gets hired, the pay period before we pay the boot allowance, they get $200 and then $200. So we're trying to close that gap. So if your boot allowance will be paid on the 8th pay period of a calendar year, which is April, the system runs on calendar year pay periods. That's why we're defining it rather than the 2nd pay period of a fiscal year. The system doesn't operate that way. Which means we have to mess with the frequency, which means human error causes a bunch of headaches for 91 people. Employees hired in pay periods 5, 6, or 7 will not receive a new hire boot allowance, but will receive the annual allowance. If you are hired after pay period 8 or before pay period 5, you would receive your new hire, and then you would just be on the annual cycle. That new boot allowance sometimes can take a pay period or 2 to hit your paycheck, and we just wanted to make sure we documented that. The next section is replacement and repair of damaged items in the line of duty. So damaged or stolen uniforms will be cleaned, repaired, or replaced at the city's expense on approval from the chief as reasonable as necessary. The item will be project coded. Clothing contaminated by bodily fluids, you're one of the few departments that I have to have a bodily fluids policy on, will be cleaned. Your sergeant will, of course, authorize that. Seized for evidence. I never thought of this as a real problem until I spent some time picking the chief and the major's brain. They don't like it when I call anymore. Boots will be replaced immediately. Guns will be replaced after 30 days. I can't buy your personal weapon that some of you carry. Like, I know you have to do that, so it's in your name. Personal items damaged. So we know sometimes you break your personal stuff that you wear to work. We have found some standards on what that should look like. So a watch, I know many of your officers wear a watch. Back up your personal certified firearm, we would replace that. You're obviously gonna have to buy that and submit for reimbursement. I can't go buy a gun for you that's not a city issue. Prescription eyeglasses, we put $250. Contact lenses, $60 per eye, so that would be one box. And then boots, we would replace immediately, and the quartermaster would order those on their P card. Your brain hurt yet? So the watch is set at $250. I'm not replacing new iWatches that have cellular data on them. Okay, so let's get into the scale itself, which I'm still not going to tell you because then you stop listening to me. The first thing we did was eliminate the third and second class ranks. That means first class step 1, 2828, was the starting base of the new table. We took the scale from 10 steps to 12. The width of the table, our goal is usually 30%. Patrol came in at 25. Corporal and above came in at 32. Now, as a refresher to step and grade charts, the width of the table is called the span. Because you are a rank-based system, we aim between 20 and 30% is our goal. We hit that for both. Movement along the steps is usually done annually, and we call those steps. We don't do mid-year steps, we don't do retro steps. Employees who are competitively promoted to a higher rank will receive a minimum of a 5% increase. So we'll take your current wage without shift diff, and we'll apply the 5%, and that's how you'll be placed at your new rank. The percentage between steps is not uniform. I build all tables this way, and I'll explain on more detail with the steps, but I have yet to build a chart where the steps all look the same. I can't do it. All right, step amounts we had to tweak because of the corporal process, and it's kind of hard to wrap our minds around because we're very much changing a function of your department. Corporal is now 15.5% above patrol officer at step 1. Sergeant is 15.5% above corporal. And this is the percentage between steps. Now, the reason they are different is because of the non-competitive corporal. The top section is for patrol officers. Step 1 to 2 is 3.5, and as you can see, the white is the step, the little colored box with the arrow is the step increase you'll receive moving up. As you can tell for patrol, it tapers off after step 6. It starts to decrease pretty heavily. The reason is because of the non-competitive corporal, we're looking to push people to that higher earning potential rather than just leave them on that scale. Corporals, detectives, sergeants, and detective sergeants. Again, I front load. The first couple years in any job, regardless of a rank change or a whole new position, are hard. So we always try to front load to kind of make you not want to demote back down. So 3.25 to 3, 2.75 to 2.5, ending at 1.5 from 11 to 12. Questions so far? Oh, you're going to have a ton at the end. Okay, so this is where I start rolling ad pays into the table. Clothing allowance is my first example. Clothing allowance was very specifically designed compared to other ad pays that I'm going to roll in. 565 divided by 2080 comes out to like 0.276 or something. Well, I don't believe in 3 decimal places in money. I believe in 2, so we round it up. So we took 2828 and we added 28 cents. Now, it's a rippling chart. So as you move up in rank, that 28 cents becomes more valuable for a corporal to a sergeant. So that is, we are aware of that. We built the chart specifically that way. That was not a math error. Bachelor's degree. So we decided to make the value of a bachelor's degree $1.25 per hour. So that ripples across steps, but not across ranks. So $1.25 is applied to step 1 of each rank for the bachelor's degree, and that value increases through steps, but it does not exponentially go up above ranks. So that was also specifically designed. So that is the dollar value we have applied for a bachelor's degree. That number is not out of the blue. I hunted down ISP's 44-page incentive document to find out what they paid, because that is the standard most people bring to me, because it's kind of a shiny gold bar and it's pretty cool. So we built it in. Okay, so now let's talk about how people got put on the chart. This is the hardest piece about all of this. You're not going to be at the step you were expecting. So when a new scale is designed and we break everything, I have to put you back on the chart. What that means is there will be compression. That means people who've held the rank longer than someone can be at the same step. The only place we address compression is step 1. And that's so an existing employee is not paid the same as a new hire. So I built the chart. Everyone went in at a 1, and I compared your wage, and I kept moving you in steps until it showed a positive number. If you were at 0, if it was a perfect match, you moved up. So everyone at least earned a penny more. We didn't have anyone in that situation based on the chart, but someone always asks. So compression is very hard, and it is going to be the biggest heartache for you in explaining this to your members. We do not address it at anything below a step 1. So there will be a bunch of people at step 2 who are going to be in different time and rank, and that's just the way a new chart works, and it is frustrating. So I'm going to show you roughly how that affected people. Currently, so the step numbers on the left, current in patrol, we have 49 people. We have 4 people at a step 10. Moving over to the new chart, we have no one above a step 6. So everyone got bumped back down the chart for earnings. So their long-term earnings potential just got considerably bigger. But you'll notice we now have a slew of people at 1-4, so that's 2 because I can't type. We now have 25 patrol officers at a step 2. The reason that number is so high is because everyone who is a 3rd and a 2nd class officer right now was moved to a step 2. So any new hires that come in will not be paid, they will be paid above them. So how I placed you on the chart itself. 3rd and 2nd class officers were moved to patrol step 2. Anyone who is currently a corporal, step 1, was moved to a step 2 to address compression. Any 1st class officer who meets the base criteria for corporal, which would be the certificate and time and grade, was moved cost-wise to a corporal. That doesn't waive, they don't just automatically get it. They still have to test and they still have to do the packet. Anyone who had 0 was moved up. The costs of this range from $45 a person to $7,500. You're looking at those 3rd class officers. We have 4 or 5 vacancies right now that we're in the middle of background checking. Those are the people that are seeing those very big raises because they're skipping multiple ranks that used to exist. This step placement we did right here, this is the step the employee keeps through the rest of my process. This initial placement cost about $231,000. Part 2 of this is we then have what we are calling an assignment placement. This is where we created the detective and detective sergeant grades. Still the same rank, but a higher rate of pay. So if you were a corporal, step 3, and you are in the detective division, which includes detectives, street crimes, and narcs, you will go to step 3 as a detective. That is paid 3.7% higher. The only place this calculation exists where the 3 and the 0.7 is right here on this chart because it doesn't exist in the spreadsheet. We addressed the difference in clothing allowance, which was $488, which came out to roughly 0.7%. And then we applied 3% for the specialty pay for being a detective. Cost placement on this for me, $2,700 to $3,200 per person, coming out to just under $60,000. An important thing to understand here is if you hold this special assignment into the detective division, when you leave that division, if you go back to patrol, you keep your step, but you lose that 3.7%. That percentage does not go with you because you no longer hold the specialty function. Step placement is still off of placement part 1. The last thing we did is if someone held a bachelor's degree or higher, we move them into the pay grade for a bachelor's degree, which increased their wage $1.25. Placement for that cost us about $72,000. That means our overall costs, the base file itself with Percy, FICA, I put in the full 6.2 for Social Security replace. Wages plus those benefits cost $7.7 million. The base file, which covers your placement, came in at 8.1, which is $406,000. I added 1.5 to the table for your fiscal year 26 table, and that takes us up another 120 for an overall total cost for sworn of $525,000. Questions I know you are going to have before you ask them. Why are detective division employees paid differently? Why are you adding clothing to base? Why does it matter if ad pays are lump sum or per pay period? And why are you removing language from the CBA tied to benefits? So, the detectives division. So, the chief is going to laugh at me because I call it murder school. Apparently, that is homicide school, which is not nearly as cool. There's a lot of specialized training you have moving into the detectives division, and we want to make sure that we are encouraging employees to take that step and learn those new skills. We also understand the work hours, while not necessarily shift work, can be very sporadic. Your holdover, the weird times you come in to deal with drug situations, there is nothing uniform about them. A lot of the cases span not months, but years. You also see a lot of very nasty things on a very long-term basis. So we want to make sure that we're retaining and motivating employees. We want to try to address a little bit through compensation that difference in your workload and your stress, and then the increased responsibility. Clothing allowance. What we currently call a clothing allowance is not a clothing allowance. We issue uniforms, so you're not buying uniforms like you used to, and our uniforms are also not dry clean now. So that's kind of a moot point. Moving it into your base wage increases the value of it. It affects your overtime and your PERSI, which a lump sum does not. Now, talking about lump sums or per pay periods, there are pros and cons listed in each of these. From the employee standpoint, increased predictability in your paychecks. You have a better understanding of what every paycheck is going to look like. You have a higher earnings potential because these items have been built into your base pay, which affects your overtime calculations. Loss of specific clothing allowances. This is more of a negative. The perceived value of something as a lump sum versus a per paycheck. Some people like that chunk of money up front. Some people like it spread out. Improved PERSI rate for anyone approaching retirement. First off, I'm jealous, but increasing your PERSI base has a long-term benefit to you and your pension. And then equity and transparency. We want to make sure that people understand their earnings, how those earnings are calculated. So by consolidating these things, it makes it easier to explain what you make. From the city side, I am not going to lie, this makes payroll processing infinitely easier. It also eases our budgeting process. It also should reduce the payroll workload around any time we do a lump sum payment for the police department. We see about 87 tax forms come in one week and then 87 tax forms come in the next to adjust everyone's taxes. Also, it is a higher cost to the city because we are driving up the overtime and the PERSI costs. So let me explain how the PERSI calculation will differ. Holly built these for me. So currently, is this current? Yep. Your PERSI base calculation includes any wages from hours that you work, which are these down here. Now this sad little box with nothing below it is ad pays that are paid consistently. That would be per pay period. Over here are all of the lump sum payments that are inconsistent with usual compensation. PERSI does not consider these in your base. By making the shift to per pay period or part of base, your PERSI base calculation just got considerably wider. Your clothing is now built in, physical fitness is now per pay period, education is per pay period, the TAC, ATAC, and then the dispatch. So that per pay period amount is not a lot more annually, but it does have a positive impact on their PERSI. And then lastly, why are you removing language regarding benefits? Well, because our benefits costs keep increasing and we need flexibility to address those. Right now, we are very limited on adjustments that we can make because we have the same plan, but different rules for different employees based on union or non-union, and we're trying to clean that up.
Sean, let's go have a conversation.
Okay.
Instead of just sitting here.
Real quick, just a
Agree.
question. You said on your presentation, this is a
Bundled.
all or none.
The big stapled one, this one?
Yeah.
This is a singular offer.
Singular offer. Okay.
These individuals.
Got you. And then, you don't have do you have the scale, the steps built yet? Do we not get to see those?
You do. Do you have any questions about the concept so far? Because once I
No,
pull
I
the
mean,
charts up,
there's-
none of you want to look at the
there's gonna
packet of
be- I mean,
information I
there's-
just gave you.
There's definitely questions, but not,
Some more questions with each other and then.
Yo, and I
Like
know.
that, the application of it, I just like to see, like how somebody at step 10 getting bumped back to, step 5 is going to be making
Yeah.
more money,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And so I just like to see.
So then
what
nobody's
that
getting a
actually looks like.
decrease.
No one is making less money at placement.
But it allows that person that's at step 10
Yes.
more
They
earning
drop
power.
back to
And they'll have
6,
five
and then
new.
they'll have 6 more steps. I have the charts ready. I wanted to give you a minute to write any notes or questions down you had. I had planned on showing those to you. No, I just want you to sign this and have no concept of what I'm
Well, no,
going to pay you.
No, we-
That's a good plan. Let's go
And
back.
then I guess my other question is, because currently there are some and I guess this would be go towards more of the CPA with like if detectives or if in a detective you have time to do that and then you're asked to go back to patrol, then that,
There's
right?
not a,
That's
there's,
kind of a,
it's not a demotion, it's a removement of the special assignment. That's why the pay does not go with them.
right.
I guess I just have a quick question on like the shift differential. Out of curiosity, why did we go like 8 to 5, 4 to midnight, midnight to 8, rather than just mirroring what our shifts are?
Well, because the problem is the shifts are not defined in contract now.
Okay.
So I had to start somewhere.
Okay.
The ambiguity of no times in the contract is problematic.
Sure.
Those are flexible, we just have to define them as a
Okay.
group.
So we could look at the option
Oh, yeah.
of just mirroring what.
You can counter and we can
Okay.
talk about things individually, but I'm not just gonna pull pieces in and out.
Sure. Okay.
You ready to see the charts?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna give them to you in paper because it's really hard to look at on the screen.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, I'm sick of staring at the screen. Okay, so this one has, oh, the chief's coming over too. This is not the final chart. This walks you through how the charts were built, which I explained is at 1, 2, 3. My assistant's not here. All right, so the first chart you're looking at is called base chart 0. So this is just exists. This is where I eliminated the third and second class. The second chart in there, as you'll see, it says clothing added. That's where I added the 28 cents. The third is the assignment. That's, you'll see the extended chart now shows a detective and a detective sergeant. This just walks you through the steps that I had in the PowerPoint to explain how I came to these numbers. So these are the first charts that exist for me to make the calculations. The next chart is chart base 3.
One more.
Okay, so the bottom chart on this one is not actually applicable, it just shows you the value. So this is where I added the $1.25. As you can see on the bottom, the blue lines, that shows you the $1.25 was applied at step 1 of each grade, and then the value increased through steps. This is the difference between it and the clothing allowance. It does not ripple up and across, it just ripples across. So this is the chart base 3 that was referenced. You replaced it 1, you moved to 2 on special assignment, and you moved to 3 based on education. I keep forgetting Marisa. Okay so far, conceptually? So the next chart I'm going to hand out is still considered a base chart. I haven't done anything for a table adjustment, but it shows you all of the shifts and the training positions. So this just shows you like how deep the chart is because we have to have all these separate pay grades for these special functions. As you'll notice, there is a blackout on patrol officer step 1 and 2 that they cannot function as a trainer. My brain is weird, and I like to see how that compares to what people currently make. And I also like to see things in an annual salary. Would you also like that?
Sure.
It makes it slightly easier to understand. So this chart, again, does not have a table adjustment to it. This is just the chart that exists for placement. Now, the dark green line is the current pay. The orange line that goes across is the difference between the new rate of pay and the previous rate of pay. There's this weird little mess of columns. I can try and pull it up. Okay, so as you're looking at the chart, there's all these little weird lines right here, because my brain is weird. These columns right here where it says like clothing applied, degree, value, that just shows you what calculation was applied. If it was a percentage, it gives you a dollar value. It also just explains how some of those numbers look. So anything that's in that weird beigeish color that's a trainer, it just shows you the percentage of value that $4 is compared to the base wage at step 1. It doesn't have any impact on the calculation. It just sometimes helps to have the data readily available without having to calculate it on your own. Would you like the chart with the 1.5% applied with annual or without annual and just seeing the hourly amount? Because one is this big and one is this big.
Personally, without
Okay.
annual. I'd just
Ryan,
like
do you
to
want
see
it with?
the hourly chart.
Both if I could.
So these two are the same chart. One just has more details than the other. And as I say that, I really hope I'm not lying to you. Because errors do happen. So little and big say the same thing, just big gives you more details. It gives you the percent between steps and the annual. And all the charts are labeled in that first big black box below the top purple lines. It tells you what each item is. So you don't have to try to remember just based on how I handed it out. Would you guys like to break for lunch?
Yeah. please.
Should we come back at, how long do you want?
I'm not planning on eating, so it's up to you guys. We're just planning on looking at it.
Let's just plan 1:30.
Okay,
It's an hour to talk.
we'll see you back at 1:30.
Okay, thank you.
How does someone know where they fall into the chart?
Okay, so I have that, but I'm not gonna give it to you yet because I want you to look at the chart first, but I will explain how I did it. So I took your fiscal year 25 wage, so I'm gonna use just a random example off here. This person is a corporal, step 2, and they make $34.06 an hour. I then added clothing. Yep, nope, yep. Try this again. Okay. 3262, they're a, no, we want a corporal who's a step 2. Okay. So this person is a corporal step 2. So I took their base wage and I added their clothing allowance. And that annual amount I divided by 2080, and that became their new rate of pay. I then compared that to a chart. I used base chart 1, and that's how they got their step placement. They kept that step when I moved to placement chart 2, which applied special assignment. So if they were a corporal but they were really a detective, they then got moved to the detective grade. Then from there, if they had a degree, they moved into the correct grade at that same step. So that's how I calculated it.
So you said base
Plus clothing divided by 2080 compared to base chart 1, which is on the first handout you got of pay charts.
I'm good now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're good with it, I think we'll get some TAs out of the way.
I'm always good with it.
I might not go in order because I mixed them up.
That's
If
okay.
that's okay.
Yep.
So we'll TA proposal 11, getting rid of all the not necessary language.
I'm giving that number, so it's all on you.
Proposal number 12. I think we only had one question, and it's
Yeah.
pretty self-explanatory. You're just not sure how we will get the pay stub, but we will get a pay stub in some
Yeah,
form
I
or
don't know
fashion.
if it'll be an email or you'll have to log into an employee
But we'll have
portal.
access
You will
to
have
it.
access
Okay.
to. I just
That's-
don't know which one it
okay.
is right now.
That's kind of what we figured, but we want to verify.
I was hoping we'd have that answer. I don't.
It's not a big deal to us whether it comes in an email or we got to log on. We just want to make sure we have access.
I don't know.
to it.
I'm pretty fond of that one just showing up in my email, so I don't have to think about it.
True. It is nice. I just look, yep.
Yep, that looks right.
boom.
So we're good on that one?
Yeah, we'll TA on 12.
I don't know if it is, but I just can't understand it.
Well,
I've been here for 21 years, I still can't understand it.
Yeah, I know.
Calculator doesn't do math that way.
but it looks close enough that you're like, okay, it's probably right.
It seems semi-right.
Proposal 13, we just had a question.
Okay.
So we're good with the suggested language, however, in the current contract in like section 14, it's right above it, it just talks about if you're not at max step, it doesn't have anything to do with the people on probation. If you're not at max step, you get a step. Is that staying the same?
I didn't just put any in 14?
Yeah, it's
13.
No, this is proposal 13, but it's in section 14 of
Oh.
the current CBA. It just says sworn members in each pay grade at maximum step will receive no pay increase. Officers below the max step will receive 1 step.
Yeah, no change to that.
Okay, so we would just basically be inserting the new pay scale into that.
Yeah, the pay scale would be the only thing that changed in that section.
Okay.
My question on that is because section 15 governs how sworn step increases occur. And now, since we've removed probationary periods, it just says sworn officers within an introductory period are eligible for a step, but doesn't address the people that are not in an introductory period.
Because it
That's
sounds,
gonna be in
it
14.
sounds like it remains in 14. I did not move that language.
Right, my understanding of 14 was the implementation of that pay schedule essentially said that when it was adopted, you went up a step.
Yes,
And
and
so,
that was negotiated with that scale, and I'm
Right.
not
and so
recommending
now
any
this,
language
where it
choice.
says sworn step increases or now it's just being changed to step increases, only dictates sworn officers within an introductory period instead of not within an introductory period.
Yes, so the previous section where we talked about the charts, I haven't redlined that because we have a new pay scale on the table. If you're more comfortable, we can just say sworn officers, even in an introductory period, will be eligible for a step movement. Would that
Yeah.
be more clear?
I think that'd be fine.
Are you okay if I write that in?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'll let you read that. Squint.
So sworn officers even within an
Yeah.
Does that take
That
take
addresses
care of the
my
ambiguity?
question, yeah.
Do you want to sign it first? You want me to?
Are you good with signing it
Yep,
like that?
yep.
Okay.
Need one?
No, I'll be all right.
I have a pencil and a pen, so his pen's dying.
I think it is.
Proposal 14, well, TA just, that's the school resource officer language. We agree it doesn't need to be there.
Let me write in my notes what we did here.
Okay. Sorry, I'm jumping around.
No, that's okay.
I know I mixed them
Down.
up.
I don't want to lose my order because then I'll never get it back. What did we decide about 14?
We would TA.
Okay.
We agree the language for dare officers and stuff doesn't need to be there. Proposal 15, we would TA as well.
Oh,
You didn't have any further questions on that, right?
We wanted to ask
That one
about
we
that
did have the
whole-
question with regards to
Oh, that's right.
accepting the lump sum payout and how that affects your
Yeah.
salary.
So we just wanted clarification when it says that you accept
I think it
the
says it right there. Number 6. I think that answers the
member who
question. we
wishes to
had.
receive the existing education incentive as set forth waives the right to receive other educational ad pay incentives.
Ad
So,
pay.
so does that mean if they take the 3,000 for like a bachelor's degree?
So bachelor's isn't an ad pay, it's part of base. It would be like the master's
Okay.
if they're getting this. You don't get both.
So it's that lump sum payment, not the
Yeah.
hourly increase?
So
Correct.
Okay.
I guess
so
just
like I thought.
Just to make it concrete in my mind, if we have a new officer that has a bachelor's degree before they start, they are eligible to essentially start
As
under
patrol
this
with
as
degree.
a patrol with degree.
Correct.
As well as accepting the 3,000.
Because it is not an ad pay.
Because it's not ad pay.
So they'd get both.
They would get
Okay.
both. If they have a
That's what I thought.
master's,
They
they
just
would
don't
only
that lump
get
sum ad pay.
the bachelor's hourly, but no ad pay. Well, they would not get the ad pay because they would get this. They wouldn't get the little master's.
Until after this is done.
Correct.
When they after the
4
whatever,
years, if
4
they did the
years,
bachelor's.
that 5th year, they would start getting
The
that
master's ad
bad
pay.
pay.
Yep,
But their base with the degree still stands.
yep, that's
Okay.
why I put ad pay in.
Okay.
But it is very hard because it's a big shift in how we process, so those are very good questions.
Then, yeah, we're good with that one.
I feel like we're breeding wet spaghetti noodles.
So you wanna ask the question?
Yeah, I'll ask
On which one?
This.
Proposal 10.
Going back.
Oh, the big long one.
So just a question I have.
Yes.
On the mental health,
Yep.
that 40-hour bank that is there. In the event an employee contacts their supervisor and says, I need a day because of whatever, this call, this incident, whatever. And it says here, the supervisor needs to notify human resources immediately to allocate.
Can you tell me what lines you're on?
Sorry, 146,
Okay.
147.
Yes.
Page 6. And then it says the bank will be added to their time bank or allocate it. And if that employee only needs like 10 hours or 20 hours, and they don't need any further, it says here they have to run concurrently, but say after that they come back, and then so their 40 hours, does it show up in their time bank?
So they would see the original, the whole allotment, the first time they use
40,
it.
okay.
Then after the pay period ends and they run time, we will remove the hours they didn't use, and those would be eligible for a later usage
During that calendar year?
during that calendar year.
So you get 40 the calendar year if you use 10 on 4 different incidents.
That's right.
Okay.
And it would show up each time it was requested. It's just the 40 max.
Okay. You're just saying it shows up in your bank.
That's
and then
what
after
I
it
guess,
goes away.
that's what made sense. I just wanted to make
Oh,
sure.
no, it's really hard to write something from scratch because we've never had a chance to discuss it. So I hope there are these types of conversations. And if we need to add some clarity here, I'm happy to
I
do
guess,
that.
and maybe, Ryan, what did you say? You said that,
My question for the notification occurring within writing, is that just a
It'll be a
sentence-
form.
A form that's just gonna be
Yep.
this person hours for this reason?
No,
and that
it'll just
gets-
be
the
allocate
portal.
hours to Sean Peterson and we will add those.
And that's just gonna be through the employee portal?
It'll be like a seamless doc that
Okay.
comes just straight to HR.
Okay, perfect.
We don't need justification as to why that will be held in the police department.
Okay.
okay.
Okay. Any other questions on that?
I don't think I do. I don't think I do. Right.
Okay. And then we'll TA 10.
I thought, is that one we need to take back because you're changing holiday and, you know what I'm saying?
We still have to get it approved.
If we need to.
Well, yeah,
We can table it then.
I would take that, yeah, either way.
Take it to the
I
bottom.
mean, essentially, it's a big change to
Yeah,
go
we'll,
from.
we'll table that one if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem. It is a big change.
So I think we're on board with the traumatic event stuff. We just have to get some more conversation with the holiday approval.
That was all of the short ones, right?
That is all of the short ones.
Okay.
Now you have to go to your Rima paper and your 47 charts.
So I guess we'll lead off. There's only, how long is this contract?
The offer on the table is just for 26.
26. I guess, can I ask why just a 1-year contract? Because everything prior to this kind of led us to believe that we wanted a multi-year.
The last couple of rounds of negotiations, we have done multi-year. We went multi-year, we went single year, we went back to multi-year. This year, I'm offering just 1 year for a multitude of reasons. But that is what we can afford at this moment, is to enter into a 1 year. It's not my ideal either. I like you all, but I really don't want to be doing this again next year, but we're
Yes.
going to spend more time together.
What other questions do we have on this?
We wanted some transparent examples of calculations
Yeah.
for how people find.
You said you had actual,
So here's my concern, and I'm gonna be upfront with you. The minute I hand you a chart about everyone is placed, they stop paying attention to the concept of what is in front of you.
So would you do this for us? And you can use mine, because I don't really care. Just, can you take mine and walk us through how we
Yeah,
get to?
I can use a couple of examples to show you how I did it.
We want to be able to go back and say.
I understand.
This is how.
So let me pop the chart up and I'll just filter through a couple positions and show you a couple positions how it impacted. Does that work?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, if we can do like 1 or 2 from each, that'd be great.
Just because we did our own tabulations, that we're just trying to make sure that we understood the math well enough that we can explain
Oh,
how people would find.
I completely understand. So I don't do this very often. I offered it to fire. It was a no for them. I'll offer it to you. And Jared's at home screaming at me because I'm not supposed to offer this till the next meeting, but here I am. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of how I did. It is a huge change for your body, and I know that. I mean, I'm addressing almost every level of your compensation except for canine officers. I am touching everything else. I am willing to set up a night session if they want to come in and ask questions. It is completely optional to you as the union panel. It is just an option. We don't do it very often because they're very uncomfortable. But if that would help you, once I explain this, I'm happy to do that. So let me find the chart. Please pay, nope, SP.
Do you want the projectors, Heather?
Yeah, in just a second. So I'm just gonna pick a random assortment of people. And we'll see if I selected well. Sorry, Jen. I missed that one. I'm gonna put a vacant in here just so you can see the massive impact it has from that third. Okay, I'm ready, Ken. I will blow it up so your eyes will not bleed. Okay, so as this is thinking, the one in like the goldeny yellow color is one of those non-competitive corporals I have planned to be a corporal, but right now they are a first-class officer. The ones in pink, those are currently corporals, but they're then assigned the special assignment of detective division. So I know, they're very colorful. It's nauseating. Plugged in.
Well,
Do you want me to unplug?
No, yeah. Yeah, maybe.
No, don't shut down. No. Ah. All right, so here's some of the examples I pulled. Kind of helpful. All right, so let's look at line 3, which is the first class officer. They're currently a first class, step 10. They make $68,577 in wage. That means their hourly rate is $32.97. I'm keeping them in patrol and I'm taking their $565 clothing allowance to get a total, which is column Q, total pay for base wage plus clothing. So I added annual plus clothing and then I divided that. So that is here. That one. Don't touch my pivot table. So they're placed as a corporal step 2 because at a step 1 it was a pay decrease. Their raise over current 25 if they were a corporal would be 82 cents. This person is staying in patrol, so there's no special assignment. So the grade does not change, and they do not have a degree. So that first initial placement is their wage until we do a table adjustment. So let me find one that's a little more complicated. So I have two sergeants here, both, I have a couple sergeants here. One's a 4, one's a 5, and one's a 10. So their wages are 83, 84, and 91. I added their clothing allowance based on street crimes, narcs, detectives, or general to get their new base wage, which is column Q. I then took that per hour and divided it by 2080, which is column Y. Y? Nope. Yep. And then I compared it to their new grade and new step, which is W. That's their final step placement. Compression was addressed. If they're in column V, if there's a yes, I changed their step because of compression, not because of wage. Now, some of these I think have the assignment, so they moved up a grade, which is where you see the difference. And then degree, if they had a degree, it again keeps their step, but adjusts their pay grade. Now, as you look at this, I can't remember if the chart feeds off of that giant spreadsheet in front of you. And when I take the 1.5% out, it screws up my whole chart. So I have to look at the chart in sections. I look at it before the 1.5 and then after the 1.5. So the numbers shift as you read through it, but that is how the calculation is done. Current wage plus current clothing allowance divided by 2080 for placement, which is your chart 1. From there is where your step is established. From your step, we then go to placement chart 2, which is where we do special assignments, which is the detectives division, maintaining step. And then everybody goes to the degree, which is placement 3, maintaining step. Conceptually, there will be errors in this spreadsheet just because people have moved since I started working on it, new hires, there can be some errors. The concept presented is what we would apply. I will rebuild all of this, start from scratch to make sure there are no errors for final placement.
So if you have someone that's currently on step 1, and then you take that out and it still leaves them in step 1?
So that is addressed right here in column V. We called it step compression. So if they were in step 1, you can see they moved up.
Okay.
Unless they are one of those non-competitive corporals we have earmarked.
Okay.
So you see a couple on here that they say 1, yes, there was compression, we moved them to a 2.
Okay.
Those are the only ones that are not wage driven.
So I'm just trying to make sure I understand it. So for example, if someone is making the 3763 on the sergeant step 1 right now,
Okay.
Do the calculations, it puts them still in step 1, but you're saying with the compression they would go to step 2?
Yeah, we are only addressing compression at that step 1. So anyone who is at step 1 will move to a 2.
Okay.
Yep. But that is the only compression point, and that is going to be your heartache point.
Yeah.
It's hard. That first year sucks.
And you said also, the officers that are currently a third class or second class
Move
officer.
to step 2.
Instead of just
I
jumping.
can't put them at 1 because then all the new hires make the same amount as
Same
them,
amount.
and that's our compression point.
What's the clothing allowance amount right now for detectives?
1,053, I
Yeah, it's
think,
just
55, something like that. $1,053. It's a lot of data to process.
Just making sure I'm doing my math right.
How did I know you'd be my math guy?
That's why we brought him.
That's why I build so many charts.
Fran?
Yes.
Next time you're not invited.
So just to make sure I'm handling you right, so like for me, I'm corporal step 3, base salary 71, 281, 0.6. I'll add the 1,053 divided by 28, and I get a raw output of 3477. If I go to chart number 1, that would put me in between steps 2 and 3, which means that I would go to number 3. Is that correct?
Yeah, you would not take a decrease.
So then that would essentially establish me as step 3. I am currently assigned to detectives, and I do have a degree. So I would then go to the overall chart and go to the detective with degree, and then move over to step 3,
You would maintain step, correct?
with putting my projected FY26 hourly rate at 38.34. If I'm reading the chart
We're using the
correctly.
same application method, yes.
I say, so
Yeah.
that for me, my example, and if other people,
Without checking the numbers, you applied it the same way I applied it.
okay. So then the compression would be if we have somebody that, when we do that calculation, would put them back at step number 1, we would automatically say step number 2.
Correct.
So that someone that gets promoted doesn't make the same
Correct.
as somebody that's already
Somebody
been.
that's promoted and or hired
Yeah.
at that rate.
So the heartache you're gonna have, and we've seen it before, is people that are currently on a step 2 or a 3 and they go back to 2 with people that basically have 2 years less tenure than them. With a new chart, it doesn't matter your time and your rank because we're doing a new placement. And that's hard for employees to like.
Do you have, and maybe you don't have this number, but I get we have 100-something employee, or was it
You have 91 sworn that are
91
on
to
this
this
chart.
affects, right? So do you have the number of the least amount, what the lowest pay increase for somebody would be? Because I know they're gonna be all over the place, right?
Oh, yeah, it's
not
like from
everybody is
8,000 to,
Yes.
yes.
So do you have the the person that's not gonna get,
Yeah.
and what is that number?
As with my draft here, it is just wage or cost, because those things are different.
Well, I'm gonna say wage because that's what, in the end,
Well, in the end, for you.
no, I get that. In the end, for us to talk to our body, we need to know what, I guess, be able to say,
Essentially,
well,
the person with the smallest change is gonna be the one that has the most questions, right? Because if
Yes.
somebody's gonna get a large change. then
I'm
they're probably
waiting
not
for
gonna ask any
universal
questions.
popularity, guys. It'd be great if you could deliver it.
And so the person with the smallest change is gonna have the questions that we need to be able
So
to
I can do
address.
it with tax built in, because that's how my chart's built.
that's fine,
And it's weird because Percy's going down in April,
which,
Because they projected a big increase this year. for the people
$366.
continuing employment.
how much?
$366.
For the year.
Yep.
And do you know how many people that affects?
No. I'd have to pull it off and look at
Yeah,
it.
that's fine.
I think that's a person. Fingers are too fat. 3.
3? And I'm guessing it's in the patrol side of it,
It
because
is.
they have the lower
Guess it's
percentage.
the people that I know who the 3 are. Based on my calculation.
All from now on.
At least I think.
It's probably three most recent. Control 1. Because everybody in steps for third class and second class are gonna see a big increase by going to.
Yeah.
Mid scale will be the 3 most recently promoted to first class.
So my guess is if they're taking that in the first year, then after that, they're gonna go up to each of them.
And I will happily pass out the convoluted make your eyes bleed spreadsheet here in a minute. I want to make sure we are asking and talking the same language before I do that.
Sure.
Because then I'm going to lose you. I barely have you on the hook now.
No, you're.
Does have any further questions so far?
So you're going to get 2 of these giant eye bleeding spreadsheets, and I'm going to have to explain why they're different. It's because they're all built off of the same table that you saw me adjust earlier. it adjusts all the numbers. So I have hard copy and pasted some of them. So some is for placement, and I will tell you which one that is. And then the other one is with the 1.5. Because I can't build it individually because of how I structured this. Design error.
Do you know if that 366 you were talking about is that pre 1.5% increase or?
I don't
after?
know off the top of my head. Let's see.
It has to be pre, that's what I'm thinking. Even post is over $5,000.
That's what I was gonna say.
Our lowest base off is in the 50s, so 1.5% of that would be,
So you get 17 cents plus.
So it's gotta be after.
that calculation's gotta be pre-adjustment for COLA.
Because the 1.5% would be full.
So 1.5% is over $600 by itself.
So you get the COLA and then raise from that,
Yeah,
where you go.
you'd get that 17 cents.
So 5 plus the 366.
Yeah, by my guess. I'm with you there. That was my thought.
It's different. Any other conceptual questions or other items that I know are gonna cause you heartache in there?
So under this proposal, there won't be any step placement or step changes within FY '26 unless there's like a promotion that essentially puts you to a new scale within that year,
There would be no step movement, there would be promotions as
which
they
would put you
occur.
at a different scale,
Correct.
new placement for that.
And they would just go like we do now, right?
Yeah, 5%.
You promote, say you promote in May, you'd go to whatever that 5% increase would be, step 1 or 2 or 3, whatever. And then you would get that step until October, and then you would go to that next step
Then you'd be eligible for the step movement in October at your new rank.
at the new,
Because any of our promotions that occur during this particular contract will establish essentially where you would be when we move to FY '26.
Yeah.
Any movements between now and the new fiscal year will be reflected, will be accurate. They'll be placed correctly and then they'll move with fiscal year. This will change greatly over the next couple months. Because I know we have people in background, so all of those vacants I have slotted in here are wrong.
right.
Okay.
And a rough cost on your civilian costs, if council were to grant 1.5, it's a rough estimate of 170,000 with a step movement.
And then if I'm understanding this correctly, the civilian employees that we have that don't have like a field uniform requirement, if I'm using the correct language, trying to find it again. So they would receive, it sounds like the t-shirt polo, as far as what they're given for a uniform, be responsible for supplying their own like pants and everything like that. And then that would not be, because they would not get a clothing allowance built into their salary scale, correct?
Correct. So it's slide 25.
understanding it right, all of our civilian positions will not receive the uniform allowance baked into their salaries. It's only gonna be sworn. Everybody else will be issued, it sounds like uniforms will not receive.
I think so.
And so even the uniform civilian positions, their salary schedules won't have an adjustment made for a uniform allowance, am I understanding that right?
Correct. So uniform civilians will be issued uniforms.
Right.
Non-uniform civilians will be issued shirts, but then they just wear business appropriate pants.
But the boot allowance, if they were,
Boot allowance maintains on the second part of that of that requirement.
So they would not receive the 565 that they currently would.
Do you guys need a few minutes to pick your brains together?
No, I think this will probably have some more questions further, but it's obviously going to take a little more time to go through and get some feedback from
I think we're understanding it.
Well, it's a
The
lot.
way we would, I guess, that was the big concern, was how do we figure out
And
where
so
somebody would be placed?
this right here is not gospel. This right here is what would control how we define the placement. If there's an error on here, that will be corrected, but it is not for the positive or negative to the employee. How we define that within the presentation is what would be the standalone.
Even when you give that to us,
This is written on tissue paper.
check it
It's
with the way it's.
conceptual, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not gonna lie, there's probably some errors in here because it's this long.
Sure.
It's this long.
Yeah.
It basically just helps you learn what step you're on. Once you understand your step, you can go to that final table that I handed out.
Yes.
And that's where that would be the gospel. This does not have the 1.5. This is placement only.
Okay.
But we can figure out where we're
Yeah,
gonna
once
be
you know the
based on
step
that. Yeah.
and the grade, you can go, the grades are awful. I have like 97 of them in there right now. That's why I need to fix them, but I didn't want to fix them because the chart is built up to flow. And if I changed one, I have to rebuild it all. So the pay grade numbers on here are not accurate, but the titling is right.
Okay.
So you can find detective with degree and find it from there. You ready for this thingy?
Yeah.
Let me make sure I'm handing you all the same one. So it's 3 pages each. They're not stapled. Sorry, your eyes are gonna bleed. I don't have a bigger printer unless I use a plotter. I have done that before. This was not that time.
And just so your color coding is the
The golden color is the
eligible for
Yep, for corporal.
corporals. The
Pink.
pink is detectives or investigations.
Yes.
And the rest is patrol.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're gonna see all these little weird scratchy numbers at the bottom. I would have to actually sit down and look at the spreadsheet to know why I wrote that down at the bottom. Sometimes my brain just works that way. Let's write down this number. If you want, I can send this to you in Excel, but I'm gonna have to take out the vertical lookups to other chart, so you can at least see semi of the calculations, if that would help, as Ryan has 3 stretched out.
Just make sure the blue is just those that are compression.
Yep.
The ones that are be.
In the step
They're getting a
compression
step
column is
4
green,
compression.
and the number adjustment is made in blue there.
Okay.
And at the top, in a bold color above the big black with the white lettering, it tells you what placement chart I was on. It's the rare time I'm the only one in the room not looking at a spreadsheet.
Any other questions at this point?
I'm just ending up with a different
Well, I think, like
projected
she's,
final hour.
those numbers on that sheet are not gospel, like she said.
Your
Right
big-
now, what I'm looking at is like, for example, like final hourly rate. I don't know what column number, but in the placement 3, moving to grades based on bachelor degree and such, I'd say that like for me specifically, just because I'm familiar with my numbers, would put me at a final wage of $37.80. And I'm just not seeing where that's reflected on here.
Because you're looking at the final chart, which is 1.5, which is not on the big giant pink spreadsheet in your
Gotcha.
hand.
So this is without
It's
1.5.
gonna be
Yeah,
on
this
this
is
one
just
right
the
here, right?
base.
That's
This is
gonna be
the
on-
placement chart.
Yeah.
This is gonna
So-
help us
yeah.
determine the step.
Yeah.
This will help us figure out the step. This will show us the step.
And then I'll show you the 1.5.
So while you're all beautiful minding over there, cannot we revisit one on the table, because I promised I would follow up on it at our first meeting? That was city 9, which was probationary periods. I said I would address that later on.
Oh, yeah.
So I just wanted to give some explanation as to why I'm looking to adjust probationary periods. I'm looking to extend those back to a year because it does not have an impact on steps. Part of the reason that was originally reduced was because it was impeding people's long earning ability within the fiscal year. Because we are removing that caveat, we would like to have promotions taken back. That's the one that we're specifically addressing. And anything into management, just because it is such an important function within the department, we were more comfortable with a year period there.
Yeah.
I promised I would bring it up and I hadn't mentioned it today, so.
Yeah, I think, we tabled it because we didn't know what the purpose was, but now that we know that the step isn't affected, I think we can TA it.
It's just
Right.
hard where we have to have 2 levels of management in the
Yeah.
field. We want to make sure we're promoting the right people.
Yeah, I think our main concern with that one was just the
steps.
step. So
Agreed.
where that's been adjusted already, I think we can TA that.
That's been one of my favorite policies we've changed since I've been
Yeah.
here, is getting rid of that no step upon probation.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. So yeah, I think we can TA 9.
You understand that now?
Aren't you glad you came to sit at the table?
Yeah. What did we just TA?
This,
Just the probationary.
moving
Back to
probationary
12.
back to,
No,
because
that's
the
fine.
reason we moved it was for the steps, and now the steps are back, so. Now we can still give step.
Any questions?
Do you?
No, I think I understand the math well enough to explain.
See, and I never do, because
Where
it's
they're gonna
not
end up.
That's the biggest thing, and that's the answer. to
Yeah,
question.
I think I understand that.
I'd say I understand how to get to
either
numbers,
way.
so. My big question was just.
Okay, I think that's all
So,
the questions we
I know I
have.
threw a ton of data at you. I know some of it is already sticking in your throat uncomfortably. We're scheduled for 9 tomorrow. Are you prepared to do anything at 9
No,
tomorrow?
that's what we were gonna say. I think if you're good with it, we'd skip tomorrow.
Okay.
Give us a chance to look over some stuff, bring it back and get some feedback, and then we could come back later.
So I will reach out tomorrow
Yeah.
or later this week to schedule a time for us to meet again.
Okay, sounds good.
All right? And we are done at 2:15.
Okay, thank you.